Hey everyone, this is Brent Sherbin, El Rubio, coming to you with some rebuy strategy. So I've got a couple of rebuy tournaments that just started here, and I want to cover my approach during the first hour of these tournaments. So basically, as it's going along, I'll comment on the relevant hands, but when there's some dead space happening, I'm going to kind of talk about my fundamentals basically for approaching these rebuy tournaments. So they're a little bit different. On the left, it's an $11 rebuy on stars where you get unlimited rebuys, and at the end you get an add-on for basically double the chip value. So it costs you $11 to get a 2K rebuy, but at the end you get 4K for the same $11 as your add-on. So there's big value in just getting through the rebuy period and spending the money for the add-on. I think about half the people actually don't end up adding on in most of these tournaments. So half the people are just single barreling these things. So it's great value. Right here, you're going to see one of the main parts of my approach. You'll see I min raise king queen in early position. Basically, in these tournaments, people seem to either be limping along or shoving pre-flop. So I don't like to raise a full stack. So most of the time when I'm coming in with either a decent hand or a hand with implied value, I'm going to be min raising. It juices up the pot a little bit and helps ensure that if I hit a big hand that I'm going to double up. And also it seems to discourage people a little bit from shoving if I min raise rather than limp. It seems like you see a lot more shoving when people just limp. And right away I'm trying to recognize people that are going to be shoving lightly, because not only am I going to be trying to get into a lot of pots cheaply with my marginal hands or hands with implied value, but I'm going to be shoving for value all of my pretty good hands. So here we can see Lovell and Igor, they're going to be looking to shove all in and call lightly. So basically, if I have ace queen or better, tens or better, in that range to start out with, I'm going to be just shoving all in. Because in these small rebuys, people love to call all-in pre-flop shoves. They'll call an all-in pre-flop shove with a hand that they would just normally fold. And it's shocking, what you'll get called with. So I'll start out kind of with that range, and if the table's crazier, I'll open my range up more and more. But basically, if I have a hand that is a value hand pre-flop, then I'm going to be shoving it all in, and I'm expecting to get called quite a bit. Otherwise, I'm trying to get into hands cheaply and try and double up that way, because there's just so many implied odds in these rebuy tournaments, and nobody's folding. So that kind of leads into my next part of my strategy, is that I'm almost never bluffing. People are calling with any type of draw, and so there's just no reason to bluff in the rebuy strategy or the rebuy period of a tournament. And at the same time, on the other side of the coin, I'm value betting the crap out of my hands. So if I think there's a 51% chance that my hand is best, I'm betting it. Now this applies to the smaller rebuy tournaments like the one on the left. The one on the right, I'm going to change my strategy a little bit more subtly, because there's not going to be as much rebuying with the higher entry fee. Basically, I think the rebuy is more like a safety net for people in these higher buy-in tournaments where you have to actually bust in order to rebuy, and where the add-on is only even value. But some subtle things like pocket pairs go up in value, suited connectors go up in value, because with that safety net of having the ability to rebuy and not have your tournament life be over if you get stacked, people are definitely folding a little bit less and more willing to put all their chips in. So hitting big hands is going to get you paid off a little bit more. So in a hand like, a tournament like this, I'm going to be raising my small pocket pairs. But I'm going to be doing a more normal size raise since it's more of a normal tournament. And I'm not going to be slow playing. Again, just like with the smaller rebuys, that's one of the subtle adjustments I will make also in the bigger rebuys, is I'm going to be value betting my hand. So here where I flopped a set, I'm going to continue betting. Here, it's unlikely that he has a 3 here, and so I'm just going to keep value betting. And he looks like he's happy to call lightly. I still have to think that I've got the best hand here, so I'm going to continue betting. If he had a 3, I think I would have known by now, and I think I would also know if he had a set. Bet a little bit smaller on the river because it doesn't look like he has a monster, and I do want to get paid off though. And I did have the best hand. He did pay me off, so right there is advantage of a rebuy tournament. On the left-hand side, you'll see that I'm continuing to get involved in pots. Looks like he had 4-6 on the table there. And I'm not bluffing, as I said before. So here where I might raise, it looks like a weak bet, where this guy probably doesn't have anything in this type of tournament, I'm only betting for value. And, I'll talk a little bit about the way that I kind of came into this strategy. I started adding these smaller rebuy tournaments just on the side while I was playing the Sunday tournaments, or if I had anything going on and I wanted to just add some other stuff where I didn't really have to think and I could just kind of play mindlessly, but it was fun. These rebuy tournaments are cheap and they're fun, and you can splash around and not worry about it too much. And I started kind of following a little system because I wasn't really concentrating too hard on it, and I ended up winning a $3 rebuy with 5K people in it, and I final tabled another one that had 7K people in it, and I started realizing that I was cashing in more than half of these little rebuys that I started playing. So I think I accidentally kind of came onto an effective strategy. And here you can see I'm going to be following my value shove of any decent hands and expecting to get called pretty lightly. So I started kind of paying attention to what I was doing in these tournaments, and basically it was getting involved in a lot of pots with the min raising cheaply and limping behind and just shoving any of my decent hands. And you can see here I get called by a guy who looks like he's even playing tight with pocket 3s. So that just kind of illustrates the point. So during the rebuy period, I'm going to constantly be kind of changing my range for shoving all in depending on the table. So we've seen some people call all ins with 3s, 7s, 9s, or 4s. So we know people are a little bit crazy, but we haven't seen anything absurd. So I don't want to be, just gambling. I want to be getting it in ahead and having a good chance of building a big chip stack. Here, I'm sure I just fold this 8-4 offsuit. I was playing quite a few tables, I think, so I think I might have missed this black chip poker table a couple of times because the notifications aren't very good, so I kind of missed out when it was my turn a couple of times. But like I said before, I'm looking to, I know that one strategy that some people do, that especially if they have the bankroll for it, is just to shove until they get either a huge stack or they get tired of rebuying. I think there's a much more economical way to do this, in that just adjusting your range so that you're definitely getting the money in ahead most of the time, and trying to get in situations cheaply where you can get your money in where you're definitely ahead post flop. So here, I'm going to adjust my range probably down to maybe ace 10 and better, and maybe 7s or 8s and better for shoving now, because it looks like there's definitely some loose callers at the table, but nobody's shown down anything absurd like they're just shoving with 10-8 offsuit or anything like that, or calling all in with any 2. So here, where as a full-on maniac rebuy strategy, approach, you might shove this or call. Um, I'm looking to have a big stack and not be rebuying a lot, not wasting a lot of chips at the same time. So I'm gonna go ahead and fold that hand that's not, not gonna make a lot of big hands. It's not a good speculative hand, and it's likely behind. And on the right side, like I said, I'm going to be following closer to a more normal tournament strategy. But you did see with the twos hand that people are willing to call down lighter, and you do have a little bit more implied odds with that safety net of being able to rebuy if you go broke. So I think I'm going to be playing my small pocket pairs and suited connectors a little bit more than I would in a regular tournament. Here I'm going to be following my usual strategy of min raising anytime it's folded to me and I have anything that is decently playable and has some implied odds to make a big hand. And sometimes people catch on to your min raising strategy, or sometimes people just get pissed off. They're like, "Why is this guy min raising every time? It's making me angry." So they'll just start reshoving over the top of your min raises, and Gasset might be a candidate for that. So you just have to kind of figure out who's doing that to you and readjust. So if I'm in late position and I have a bigger hand like ace king or pocket tens or something like that, and now I might just min raise if I start to suspect that Gasset is catching on to my min raising strategy. So although there's not a lot of thinking in this approach, there is a little bit of kind of out leveling people, and luckily at this level it's not too hard to to stay one step ahead of most people. On the right you see in position with a hand that has some potential. I'm gonna get in cheaply. Here I'm going to limp behind with a decent ace, something I'd definitely fold in a regular tournament. And on the right, with everyone checking, like I said, I'm going to be value betting lightly, and I think my jack might be good there, and I'd prefer to just take it down. And I didn't bet too much. I found out pretty quickly that it's probably not good. And we got a king high flop here, and like I said, I'm not making any bluffs. That might be a good board to try and take down. Looks like nobody has a king, but like I said, my strategy is to value bet when I get my money in and not waste chips bluffing and calling with inferior hands. But here, like I said, I'm going to value bet light, and I'd say there's a decent chance my ace is good here. I'd say it's over 50%, and I think that there are quite a few hands that would call me with worse that I'm beating, like anyone with a queen, maybe anyone with a 10, a jack, definitely a king. So the reasons to value bet go up in a rebuy tournament big time, because people are willing to call off with gut shots and third pairs and stuff like that much more frequently. But yeah, the nice thing about these things is they don't take a lot of concentration, and so you can play many tables at once, and it's not high stress, and they're such good value. If it's such an advantage when half the people are not even getting that, double value add-on at the end of the rebuy period, and you are. And so, most of the time you're going to be ending up these first hours with at least double the average stack and half the field gone. So it's a pretty good advantage. And kind of the next part of it, or the other big advantage to playing like this and playing this approach, is that you look like you're just a retard fish, min raising an early position with medium good hands and just shoving all in pre-flop like a monkey all the time, never bluffing, uh, value betting hands that look like they're marginal. So when the rebuy period ends, if anyone's been paying attention to either your stats or how you're playing, they're going to think you're a complete monkey. And it seems like oftentimes in these tournaments, at the end of the rebuy period, I just look like a complete fish, and people play against me accordingly, and I end up, still having huge implied odds on my hands for a while after the rebuy period, because people think that I'm so terrible by the way that I've played during that first hour. Here again, nice to get into a cheap flop, but I'm not bluffing. In a regular tournament, I might try and take this down because it looks like nobody has anything, but not here. I'd save my chips for when I can value bet. And it looks like I would have been wasting my chips there. And as I was discussing pre end of the rebuy period and post end of the rebuy period, it goes both ways. You also shouldn't assume that your opponents play exactly the same way either. A lot of other people too, play completely differently before and after the rebuy period. So I would say just start over with all of your assumptions at the end of any rebuy period and just hope that people have the same assumptions about you. Here, I go ahead and call. It's a four-way pot, and I've got an open ender. In a regular tournament, I might fold that with the flush draw out there. Actually, I'd probably call since I'm last act, but definitely a call in a rebuy tournament. I think I'll probably, limp in with this hand even. If I'm in position, and, even if it's a non-suited two-gapper, the implied odds I think are just so big that I'm pretty much trying to get into any flop, especially when I have position. Because whenever you flop two pair or better, most of the time you're going to get paid. If anybody has any type of decent draw or top pair or better. Here on the right, ace four suited might be a hand where I'll come in a tournament like this probably. Might fold that in a regular tournament, but here, like I said, you have a little bit more implied odds, even though it's not one of the smaller rebuys and people aren't going as crazy. I think you definitely have some more value with your implied odds, with your hands that can hit home runs, and definitely a suited ace can hit a home run, because you're definitely doubling up with flush over flush in a tournament that has rebuys. But I'm going to go ahead and check fold this, even though it's kind of a dry flop and I was the pre-flop raiser under the gun. In a tournament like this, I'm just not messing around with it, not bluffing. Looks like I had another tournament pop up there. I would have come in here for a limp in the cutoff with just a limper or two in front of me with 8-6 offsuit, but once we get the raise behind, I'll be folding. Here on the right, I've got ace-queen here, and if this was a tournament on the left, I would be shoving all in, but I think that in this tournament, the ranges are going to be a lot tighter for people to be calling my all-in shove, and it would probably be either a coin flip or I'd be behind. And it's always a little bit riskier also when you have that under the gun limper, because sometimes people do limp with aces, kings, and ace king. So I'm going to go ahead and just see a flop here. Sometimes in other tournaments I might raise out of the big blind there and try and push my pre-flop edge with ace-queen. But in these rebuy tournaments where the chips are just going to come to you so easily, I'd rather wait for those chances to push my equity when I'm way ahead and let the chips come to me, because there's no need to push the action and try and push small edges to get chips in these tournaments. There I did have a speculative hand with 5-6 suited, but you can see that raise was pretty big. Looks like it's almost 300 there, and the antes are 30-60, so I'm not going to waste my time calling 5x raises. I probably could have called there, but there is a little bit more chance that there's going to be a squeeze in a tournament like this as well, so you hate to put in 5x pre-flop with a speculative hand and then fold it without even seeing a flop. I don't remember the action or what happened here, but I'm guessing that level could have an overpair. And I'd be surprised if God Spirit folds anything. Yeah. Well, it's just a great example right there. He stacked off with pretty much drawing dead to run a runner. First I thought he had a flush draw, but I guess he did not. Overpairs are golden in rebuy tournaments during the first hour. Here on the right, I folded 8-4 offsuit. Even though it was just limped around, I'm on the button. I'm not going to get out of control with my limping with garbage. I want to at least have some type of chance to flop a big hand. I probably would have folded that in the smaller rebuy tournament too. Although I think you could make a case for calling with any two in these smaller rebuy tournaments if you're on the button and there's a lot of limpers and the blinds aren't players that are shoving with a wide range. King 10, I'll be min raising, my standard. If I have a decent hand with value, and I'm first in, then I'm gonna come in with a min raise. Obviously coming in with a small pocket pair. We've seen how valuable those can be. Golfer just called, and we've seen him shoving a few hands earlier when he had decent strength hands, so I would say that his hand is pretty marginal. And again, like I said before, I'm going to be value betting when I think that I have the best hand, and I probably do have the best hand. Probably going to get called there by a gut shot or a queen, so it's even more valuable to bet there than in a regular tournament. Seesaw on the right there, Scrimshaw called down with pocket nines on a 10 high board, and so he looks like he's pretty loose. He's the one that was also, I think, in the hand where he called down with the 4-6 against my pocket two, so he's definitely one guy that we want to get into pots with. So besides trying to identify people that are just shoving really lightly and adjusting your range versus them, you also want to identify the people that are just calling down, hoping to hit some random two pair, hoping to hit a gut shot or something like that. So I'm looking to get into pots with Scrimshaw, and against Gassett, I'm now looking to open up my range for getting it all in pre-flop. He's shoved on me a couple of times there, so if I'm in later position, and I have a decent hand, I'll probably min raise it, and if I have a marginal hand, or min raise instead of shove, like a strong hand. And if I have a marginal hand like ace jack, maybe even ace 10, or like eights or something like that, and he shoves all over the top of me, I'm definitely going to be calling now. But when you do find someone like Gassett who starts to shove over your min raises, you have to tighten up a little bit. So even though I wouldn't have raised 8-4 suited before, before if that would have been like 6-8 suited, I probably would have raised. But now I'm gonna tighten up a little bit since I've got somebody who's reshoving over my min raises. Suited ace though, I'm definitely coming in. I do get shoved on again. So it looks like some people are coming onto my game. I think I did just have to. I cut out a couple minutes there because I lost connection, and so this was the first hand after I came back after I lost connection, and this guy had just come to the table, so that definitely factored into me folding here. I eventually fold. If it would have been Gassett, I would have thought about it, definitely. Probably still folded, but this guy, he doesn't know that I've been min raising a lot because he just got to the table, and I have no idea what his range is because I haven't seen him shoving at all. It looks like he came to the table and raised one hand, and that was his second hand. So that's not enough evidence to be calling with a mediocre ace. Again, I'm taking this stance that I want to get my money in ahead and let the money come to me. I'm not just trying to gamble with slightly negative EV to try and build a huge stack or rebuy 100 times. Here, flop top pair. And I imagine I'm going to bet this. As I said, if I think I have the best hand, I'm betting. Because there's just such a big range, it's going to call you. And he folds. I think I would probably limp this. This guy hasn't been crazy in any way. And just going to continue to save my chips and not bluff. In a regular tournament, I definitely would have taken a shot at this by now. And here I've got ace queen. If somebody raises in front of me, I'll be shoving over the top of them. If it folds to me, I think shoving here or min raising because of Gasset. Yeah, I think with the limper, yeah, I didn't want to min raise and let him in so cheaply with only ace queen, so I end up just shoving. And he actually calls me. He had a pretty strong hand, but just shows people. And I do win the race again, so that's nice. But people are willing to call all-in shoves with hands that they weren't even willing to raise pre-flop with, which is pretty interesting. Although that guy might just be a complete fish who doesn't even know how to raise pre-flop. Going with my strategy, min raising again. And I said I'm not bluffing, but I'm value betting here. I think my 6 is probably good. Get called. And I'm probably not ahead, I'm guessing, after he calls, so I just checking down from there. So no elaborate double, triple barrels. Just want to smoothly get my money in ahead and win flips. Jack 5 suited there. Sometimes I'll call with that. I'm in semi-late position, but Gasset and Guga 62, they've been a little bit aggressive. So, and they had monster hands behind me, which I could just feel. Jack 8 off there, I would probably, since it's a rebuy and it's multi-way with 2 limpers already in, I'll probably limp behind on the button. But I'm not a very good multi-tabler, so maybe I time out here. For some reason, the notification software with black chip poker is not very good. I continuously missed that I was involved in a hand here or that it was my action. I think that's definitely one disadvantage of playing so much live poker. You get kind of trained into having tunnel vision on one table at a time and really focusing on whichever decision you're thinking about. And whenever I play like Sunday tournaments and have a bunch of tables going at the same time, I find myself timing out all the time. Not because I'm taking too long to make decisions, just because I just zone it out. I hear the beeping, I'm like thinking about my decision, and I guess I need to practice my multi-tabling more. So with Jack 10 suited, I'm sure I'm going to be getting involved here. If it was just Scrimshaw, I probably would have raised to isolate him there because he's shown to be such a bad calling station. But with the other guy limping in, I think I go ahead and elect just to limp. Yeah. Well, we see Gasset had a big hand when he got it all in here, and Guga. Kind of a cooler when they're raising so much pre-flop. So ace deuce here, I imagine I probably fold because the table's a little bit aggressive. Got a couple of guys that are shoving quite a bit. Obviously going to fold Jack 10 there. Completely missed. It's a horrible board. But if in the smaller rebuy tournament, if the table looks like they're much looser and much more passive, and sometimes you'll see that in these $3 and $11 rebuys that people are just limping every time, and the table, pre-flop raise percentage is like 3%. Then, I'll come in with a small raise with even ace deuce, whatever. Just because the competition is, so fishy in this first hour that playing any hand profitably with enough money behind, or playing any hand with enough money behind is almost profitable. There with ace 4 in the cutoff, I think a limp behind again is fine. In a regular tournament, I definitely fold that. Or if I'd been paying more attention to Buck's fan, if he was also a weak player like Scrimshaw, then I might raise it up and isolate those two players. If that was in the smaller rebuy, I probably would have called as well. Here I get to see his cheap flop with Jack 7 and flop a gutter ball. But again, I'm not going to be semi-bluffing unless I'm semi-bluffing for value, meaning that my hand probably has more than 50% equity. Here I think if I would, on the right I had an 8-9 offsuit against Scrimshaw. If I would have been paying more attention, I probably would have been trying to isolate him more often. Obviously he's just playing every hand and calling down if he has anything, which is the kind of player you'll find, especially on some of these smaller sites that have a lot of sports bettors on them, like the Merge Network, and factor in the fact that it's a rebuy tournament. These are the players that you find in these tournaments, and that's why they have such good value. So those are the ones you're trying to identify and get into pots with. I think I'm going to continue limping here with King 6. I could have raised a little bit there too. This guy obviously is playing pretty tight, but betting here, not as a bluff, as value. I think my King High is probably good here. So again, just continuing to bet if I think I have the best hand. Here with Ace Jack, I think in most situations I might min raise if it's folded to me on the button because of Gasset. And here is a strange situation. This guy we saw, he wouldn't even raise with pocket nines. He hasn't raised in 42 hands, and even though it's a rebuy, I just end up folding because he's got to have a tight range there, you would think. And then it was good timing for the fold because another extremely tight guy right behind him ended up 3-betting him. So So I think my ace-jack is definitely behind. And Oginge, he actually ended up folding. So I wonder what kind of hand he would raise. His first raise out of 43 hands and then fold to a 3-bet. That was quite interesting. Maybe what happened is with my aggression earlier, he figured he didn't want to be viewed as having a weak hand like last time and be put to a decision with a decent hand like pocket nines, and so maybe his thinking was, well, I'll raise so my hand strength won't look as weak, so I won't have to be put to a decision. That's kind of the thinking that you see with a lot of weak players. They don't like to be put to tough decisions. Here I'm raising queen 6. It's got some value. It's suited. There's antes out there now, so I want to get involved in pots. I'll probably bet this. Queen high has probably 50% chance of being good. Obviously, in a regular tournament, I'm c-betting that flop every time. Unless I'm trapping. (7-5), I probably would have limped behind earlier, but now the blinds are getting a little bit bigger, so you're not getting in as cheaply. And as well, we've seen that there's a few players behind that have a propensity to shove, so you got to tighten up with some of your lower end garbage. Looks like I got moved tables over here on the right, unfortunately. I think I saw that poor player got stacked one more time. But king 6 suited, where I might open it in a small rebuy tournament if it's a passive table. This is, like I said, I'm going to play closer to normal style, and we'll be folding it. Same thing with 7-4 suited. If it's passive, low rebuy, complete fishbowl table, then I'd probably come in with a small raise. Here with the 8-7 suited, I'm definitely coming in. And Gasset comes with his re-raise again. Well, one of these times I'm definitely going to have a monster or a hand that crushes his range. So hopefully it comes soon. And at least it's not too costly when I do get shoved on. This is a good thing about coming in with a min raise. I only lose 200 chips, which is less than 2/3 of the pre-flop pot before the action even starts. But although it is kind of a pain, I'm being shoved on so many times by Gasset behind me. It's a good opportunity. I've lost 2 big blinds 3 times, and once I get a hand, I'm gonna have a great opportunity at 40 big blinds. So it's still it's okay with me. Here on the right, I have Jack, and I think this is a good illustration here of the slight difference between this tournament that's rebuy and a normal tournament. I've got 35 big blinds here, and it would be a close decision between calling, re-raising, and pushing in a regular tournament. 35 blinds is quite a bit. It's definitely an over raise all in here, but because it's a rebuy tournament, I think it definitely pushes it to a clear push. So I go ahead and shove there and get the folds, which is fine, although a light call would have been better. Here I'm going to go ahead and raise. This guy's been playing pretty weakly in the big blind, and I think my ace-8 is probably good. He did call me on the flop, so I think that with him being a tight player, there's a decent chance that my hand might not be good. He bets so small on the turn, though, that I have to call. That's so many draws out there. And probably should have maybe bet small on the river with that ace. He ended up having Jack-10. Okay, I think that is the end of the rebuy period. It looks like I'm doing pretty well in both tournaments. I've got double the average in the $11 rebuy, and I'm definitely going to take my double value add-on, which should extend my chip stack ratio to the average. And in the black chip poker tournament, I'm 94th out of 243, so I must be above average there as well. I think the important thing to note is that I got into lots of pots cheaply. I was able to get called fairly light with my value shove all-ins pre-flop, and I never once bluffed. I only value bet, and basically I never got myself into any tricky situations, and I never had to rebuy, and I was still able to, easily build up in decent stacks. Now, obviously, I was able to win a couple coin flips, and I did happen to hit a set on the right, but this is typically how it seems to go in these lower rebuys for me, is that I'm able to just consistently play this non-tricky strategy, and it's a pretty good way of chipping up without going for the rebuy maniac madness approach. And after this rebuy period break gets over and we come back, I'm going to be coming in with pre-flop raises in a much tighter range, which is, I think, going to probably throw my opponents off, and they're going to handle my pre-flop raises incorrectly, and I'm going to be bluffing a lot more, taking away a lot more pots. If anyone's been paying attention, they've seen that I haven't bluffed it at one pot during the whole hour, so my bluffs are probably going to be more effective. And when I come in for small raises with a very strong range, people are going to be incorrectly getting money in against me much weaker than they should. So not only was I able to chip up with this strategy, but it helps me after the rebuy period when I completely shift gears and causes my opponents, if they pay attention, to play incorrectly against me. So I hope this has helped, and I hope that some of you guys are able to apply some of these principles to the lower rebuy tournaments, because they're definitely high value, especially if you're trying to build up bankroll, and there's lots of bad players that don't take advantage of the the add-ons or the rebuys and just play poorly. If you have any comments, please feel free to leave them in the forums, and I'll be checking those out, and looking forward to some hearty discussion with other Drag the Bar members. Until next time, take care.